One of the principles that I work at intentionally living by, some days I'm better at it than others, is follow my enthusiasm. And it's interesting to look at the origin of the word enthusiasm, which comes from the Greek word entheos, which means the God within or inspired by divine presence. And so enthusiasm is not an emotion, it's a state of being. And that state of being, if you tune into it, is the state where we are most open to and connected to the divine flow of energy and power. How does it feel? In my experience, it feels light, it feels expansive, it feels energizing. And what I work at doing is, as much as I remember, is to bring my attention to how do certain actions feel in the body. And I want to make a distinction between feelings and emotions. Feelings are the sensations that we experience in the body, and emotion is when we take those sensations and add a story to it. Then the story overpowers the feeling and drowns out the feeling. Okay. But if you bring your attention to the feeling in the body, how do certain actions feel and how do certain decisions feel? We are hoping to send our oldest daughter to a high school next year, and the school that we're wanting to send her to, we have to now pay deposits and so on. So it gets a bit expensive. And the start of this year hasn't been all that easy financially. It's been a bit challenging. Anyway, when I think about sending her to the school and I tune into the feeling is expansive, it's light, it's progressive, it's energizing. I feel a strong sense of enthusiasm. When I think about sending her to a different school, it feels heavier, it feels tighter, it feels more contracted. And what you want to start thinking about is, where is the feeling of enthusiasm most strong for you? And then use that to direct your attention and your actions. Because, and sometimes that might mean that where your enthusiasm is pointing might be different to where your logical mind is telling. Sometimes the logically correct answer or decision or action might be there, but the enthusiasm is pointing you there. Keep in mind that there's an infinite intelligence that is animating everything in our universe. And that intelligence is all-knowing, whereas our logical mind is limited. We have a limited perspective. We cannot even process all the information coming through our senses, and even that sensory information is limited. So we are making decisions and choices based on a very, very, very small sliver of the facts, if you will. And whereas divine intelligence is all-knowing. And divine intelligence communicates to us through our feelings. But we've often become so tuned out of those feelings in the body, and we've become overwhelmed and blinded by the senses. What we see, what we hear, all the negativity that gets bombarded in our society, bombards us through our society, news, politics, all this negativity and fear-based stuff. And then the mind gets involved. The last few days, I've been guilty of falling into into that too much. I've placed too much attention on what's happening in the world politically, and the moment that you place your attention on that, the mind grabs it and runs with it and tells you, and gets really creative with the stories. But if you stop and think about it, all those stories, all that fear-based stuff, and all that negativity is really just future projections. It's projecting a story into the future that doesn't exist. Yes, there are things that are going on now, right? But the stuff that's going on right now, or it might be intense, but all it requires us to deal with it. The thing that trips us up is when we start projecting that forward, and we start anticipating negativity. We start anticipating, fear-based stuff in the future, because one, it doesn't exist. Two, we can't do anything about it. We can't handle it because it hasn't happened, or it's not happening, and therefore our stress levels rise. So think about this word attention. Attention is your point of power, your point of personal power. Whatever and wherever you place your attention is where you are co-creating your life. If I place my attention on all the negativity, then my creative power is being driven by fear, by negativity. If I place my attention on what my mind is telling me, then my creative power is being driven by a limited perspective. But if I choose to place my attention on where I feel the strongest enthusiasm, now my attention is being driven by and directed by an infinite intelligence that knows the right path for me, and in your case, the right path for you. Sometimes we've got to step back. We've got to turn down the volume on what's happening out there, and we've got to turn up the volume on what are the feelings happening in the body, separate from the story. Remember, feelings versus emotions. Emotions are when we add story to it. So if you're getting hooked up in the story of what's happening in the body, okay, then you've missed the point. Then you're not in the body, you're in the mind, all right? What we're talking about is what are the feelings in the body? When we take the story off, then there's no good and bad feelings. They're just sensations in the body. Okay, and if you've got a decision to make or an action that you're wanting to take, tune into the feeling in the body. If you take that action, if you tune into that action, how does the enthusiasm feel? If you tune into that action, how does the enthusiasm feel? Okay, and there might be more than two options. Often the decisions and the choices that you make, the mind, your logical mind, and your feelings might not be giving you the same answer. But just remember, your attention is your point of personal power. That is where you co-create. Are you allowing your attention to be directed and driven by social media, by negativity out there? Are you allowing your attention to be directed and driven by the limited perspective of your logical mind? Or are you allowing your attention to be directed and driven by infinite intelligence? And when you do that, you co-create your life. You work with life. It's interesting, actually, to note that the word live, spelled backwards, is evil. Now, take all the connotations we have to the word evil and just simply think about evil as living against life. You're going against divine intelligence. You're going against God. You're going against the divine, whatever you choose to call that. you are exerting your will, you are placing your attention, you are allowing your attention to be driven and directed by something other than divine intelligence. And when we live against life, we suffer. So all suffering comes from living life living our lives against divine will. When we align with divine intelligence and infinite intelligence, not only do we experience joy and freedom, that's where we're going to live our most expansive expression of our own purpose. So I hope that was helpful.